I am Aurora Campbell, 32 years old. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. In my family's eyes, I've never been the special one. Not like my sister. Melanie, the one they always called the pride of the Campbell family. Beautiful, graceful, married to a wealthy man, and mother of two adorable kids. Every time we had a family gathering, my mom would proudly tell the neighbors, "Melanie was just invited as an honored guest at a charity event. Everyone loves her." And me? I was the one slicing fruit, clearing the table, quietly listening to stories about Melanie's achievements, telling myself, it's okay, as long as the family's happy. No matter how hard I tried, I was always just the shadow behind her spotlight. I wasn't remarkable, but I was steady. I'd been self-sufficient since I was 21, never asked anyone for a dime. I worked hard in logistics, never missed a bill, never borrowed money. Even when my parents needed someone to cover the electric bill they forgot to pay, or front some cash for storm damage on the roof, I was there, without complaint. And every time, I'd get the same brief message from my mom. "Thank you, honey. It's a blessing that you don't have the burdens Melanie has." I used to swallow the words I wanted to say. What did no burdens mean exactly? That because I didn't have a family of my own, I was obligated to carry someone else's? But I stayed silent, thinking, I'm the daughter. I should be generous. The first time I truly felt upset was when my mom called in the middle of an important meeting. "Aurora, I just got off the phone with Melanie. She's so stressed. Ellie's preschool tuition just went up by more than $800. Can you help your sister out a little?" I still remember her tone. Half a request, half a command. I apologized to my boss for an urgent call, hung up, and transferred the money on autopilot. 3 days later, I received an invitation to my niece's birthday party. It was being held at a fancy resort. Tucked inside was a photo of Melanie and her husband lounging on a yacht, both of them glowing. The caption below read, "Family is everything." I smiled, a bitter smile. Family is everything? I was part of the family too. But somehow, I was just the interest-free bank. Another time, my dad sat at the kitchen table with his coffee and said, "You live alone, no husband, no kids. What's the money for? Sharing with family is just natural." I tightened my grip on the spoon, staring at the old wooden table. Has anyone ever asked me if I was okay? If I had dreams? Never. I only came to mine when there was a crisis or a bill that needed to be handled temporarily. One Christmas dinner, my sister casually stated, "Aurora's the most independent in the family. She doesn't have kids, so she's got it easy. Unlike us." I swallowed my bite of turkey. I didn't respond, but inside, small stones were piling up, heavy, ready to break through. I started working at 22, right after graduating from Tennessee State. Unlike Melanie, who had help from our parents to buy a car and got 3 years of rent paid up front, I moved into a tiny studio in East Nashville. Thin walls, creaky wood floors, and an air conditioner that roared like a tractor. But I felt proud. It was my space, paid for with my first real paycheck. That sense of ownership didn't last long. Just a few months later, while standing in line at the grocery store, my mom called. "Aurora, our AC broke. Your dad's sinuses are acting up. Can you send us $200 in advance? We'll pay you back by the end of the month." Before I could answer, she added, "Melanie's busy planning the kid's birthday. You know how expensive it gets with little ones." I sighed, put some items back from my cart, and transferred the money that night. Then Melanie's car broke down. Then summer school tuition for Ellie. Then repairs after a windstorm. One by one, every need fell on me. Automatically. No one asked if I was okay. As long as I didn't have kids, as long as I was unattached, they assumed I'd handle it. It's not that I didn't feel tired, I just didn't know how to speak up. My dad once patted my back, smiling warmly. "You're strong and capable, not like your sister. Melanie's more fragile, you know, with 2 kids and all. But you're lucky. You're free." I looked down at my coffee. "Free?" he said. Did that mean being the lifeboat when the whole family was sinking? Being forgotten at every celebration, but remembered when the money ran low? One October evening, after a long workday, I walked in and saw my phone blinking. A text from Mom. "Honey, Melanie lost her dental coverage again, and Ellie needs urgent dental work. Your sister's so stressed, can you front a bit? I'll send it back later." At that moment, I was holding the confirmation email for a trip to New York, my first vacation in 3 years. I had planned it since spring, saved by working overtime, skipping brunches with coworkers. And I hit cancel. I never told anyone about that trip. Like every other time, I chose to sacrifice. Quietly. Melanie never knew what I gave up for her. She didn't know, and honestly, she didn't need to. To her, it was all expected. One night before Christmas, as I poured wine for my mom, Melanie said lightly, "Aurora always has money on hand. She's single, doesn't have to worry like we do. Sometimes I wish I had it that easy." I tightened my grip on the glass. I don't remember the food that night, but I remember the laughter. Mom, Dad. No one questioned that remark. In their minds, I was the one who had it easy. Another time, I was making tea, hands still damp from doing dishes, when the phone rang. "Aurora, Melanie's basement has mold. The cleanup's over $3,000. I know you don't have much extra, but if you could help out," I asked again, not with irritation, but with a calm curiosity. "Does Melanie know you're calling me?" Mom stayed quiet for a few seconds. "She's shy. She didn't want to bother you." I nodded, hung up, then sat down on the kitchen floor. I didn't cry. I wasn't angry. There was just a quiet emptiness that washed over me, like a cold towel wrung dry. I wasn't born to be someone's walking wallet, but they made me believe it was my duty. Every no I swallowed, every plan I delayed, every dream I folded away. All of it was traded for one thing: the false comfort of a family that didn't care to see me. I never asked to be praised, but I didn't want to be the person they only remembered when something needed fixing. I wasn't a backup option. And they forgot one important truth. The quiet ones, when they leave, don't announce it. I once had a small dream, just to sit by the window of a cafe in Paris, holding a cup of hot espresso, watching the crowds move along the Boulevard Saint-Germain. Nothing fancy. No one needed to come with me. I just wanted to be there, present, in my own life. I started saving when I was 26. Every month, I set aside a fixed amount. Even when work was uncertain, even when gas prices rose, even when I had to delay buying other things, the travel fund remained untouched. I called it my real-life fund, because it was the only thing that made me feel like I was living for myself. By the end of the first year, I had saved nearly $3,000. I planned to fly to Paris the following spring, when cherry blossoms bloom in the Champ de Mars. But in January, Mom called. "Aurora, Melanie just lost her job. Her temp contract was cut. She and her husband are panicking. They're behind on the car loan." I froze. They didn't give an exact amount, just danced around it. Just a small contribution would help so much. In the end, I transferred $3,500, nearly all my savings. Paris was folded up and stored in a folder on my computer labeled "Maybe next year." The next year, I started over. I swapped Paris for Florence since tickets were cheaper and I had just watched a film set there. That summer, I almost hit my goal. But then Dad fell from the roof while trying to fix a gutter. The hospital bill came to nearly $8,000. Insurance only covered half. Melanie called. "Can you help out with Mom and Dad a bit? We're stretched thin. Ellie's starting first grade and Noah's having serious allergy issues." I knew exactly what they expected. And I still remember the feeling when I hit transfer, like I was packing Florence into a box without a name. That box lived inside me, growing heavier with time. I had planned for Barcelona, then Kyoto, then Santorini. I once taped a map to my wall and marked every place I dreamed of visiting. But every time I got close to boarding a flight, something happened at home. I never got close enough to touch the dream. One early autumn night, while cleaning out my closet, my hand brushed against an old suitcase covered in dust. Still stuck to the handle was a note that read, Rome, April. I stared at it, and it felt like I was looking at a version of myself that still knew how to dream, how to live, how to step outside the boundaries of obligation. I sat down on the floor, opened my laptop, and pulled up the Maybe Next Year folder. Over 40 PDFs of unsent itineraries, flight confirmations never used, hotel reservations left untouched. Each one stamped with a different year, a different season, a different time I didn't choose myself. Had anyone ever asked what I wanted? Had anyone ever said, Aurora, save that money. Don't worry about us for once? Because to them, I was the one who could always put her dreams on hold. One Monday morning, I saw a photo Melanie had just posted. Her whole family stood smiling under a sign that read, Welcome to Cabo San Lucas. Golden sunlight, white dresses fluttering, perfect smiles. Her caption read, Family is everything. Work hard to live a life worthy of the people you love. I stared at that photo. The same trip she had said was impossible right now due to finances. And just 3 weeks earlier, I had sent her $1,200 to help pay for Noah's medical bills. It wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I just saw everything more clearly than ever before. I closed my laptop, opened the closet, and pulled down the dusty suitcase. I took out my debit card, opened my browser, and booked a ticket. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't send a travel itinerary. Didn't leave a note. That Friday morning, I arrived at Nashville International Airport nearly 3 hours early. I had just one carry-on suitcase and a small backpack, but it felt like I was carrying a whole chapter of my life folded shut. The flight to Rome was set to depart at 9:15 a.m. I chose a window seat, economy, nothing fancy. But to me, it marked something sacred. After more than a decade, I was finally leaving the United States. Not for work, not out of duty, but for myself. As I stood in line at the security checkpoint, scrolling through my phone to avoid eye contact, a familiar voice rang out behind me. Ellie, hand Noah his juice box. You're spilling it. I froze. My heart clenched. I turned my head. There, just a few feet away, in the priority boarding line, was Melanie, with her 2 kids. And our mother, all wearing matching hoodies with the words, La Famiglia Summer Trip across the chest. Laughing. Chatting. Mom pulled a suitcase with a giant straw hat hanging from it that read, Ciao Bella. I couldn't believe it. I stepped back, hiding behind a signpost. My throat tightened. They were boarding a flight to Italy. Same day. Same time. Right then, I heard Mom say, It's just too bad Aurora couldn't come, but she probably wouldn't enjoy crowded places anyway. Melanie laughed. Don't worry. Honestly, I don't think she fits in with the whole Italy vibe anyway. She's probably at home reading like always. Both of them laughed, softly, naturally, without a trace of hesitation. I stood there, in the middle of the wide airport terminal, surrounded by strangers rushing past with rolling suitcases, and yet I felt completely empty. Not because they didn't invite me, but because I suddenly realized they never even considered it. I didn't exist in their plans. The trip I had spent years saving for turned out to be their private vacation, likely funded, at least in part, by all those emergency helps I had given. I turned away and quickly headed toward the women's restroom, trying to escape every glance. Locked in a small stall, I sat down on the toilet lid, cradling my head in both hands. No tears, just the quiet collapse of a trust that had eroded down to nothing. I opened my banking app and stared at the balance. I remembered every transfer, every canceled plan, every dream pushed to next year. And I finally understood. There would never be a next year. Not if I kept being the foundation for people who never saw me as part of the picture. I didn't call them. I didn't walk over to say hello. I didn't wait to see how they'd react if they spotted me. I returned to the line. When the boarding group was called, I stepped forward calmly, without glancing left or right. On that flight, I sat quietly, staring out the window as the wind slid over the wing. The sun rose above the clouds. It was heartbreakingly beautiful. But inside, I had only one thought. I had seen enough. And I would never forget. I arrived in Rome late in the afternoon. The evening light spilled over the terracotta rooftops, glowing like honey on centuries-worn cobblestones. I wheeled my suitcase through a small piazza near the hotel, the sound of the wheels on stone like a greeting from a completely different world. No one knew I was here. No message asking if I had landed. No call to check if I needed anything. And strangely, I felt more peaceful than I had in years. The next morning, I sat at a tiny cafe tucked between two old buildings. My cappuccino rested on a curled iron table, the foam as soft as clouds. I didn't take pictures, didn't post a story. I just sat there, watching Italians pass by, moving as if time wasn't chasing them. For once, I didn't have to plan my day around money transfers. I didn't sit in front of a spreadsheet, and I didn't dread a text from Mom or Melanie. I thought, maybe I should be happy. But then that comment came back, light, casual, sharp like a blade. She doesn't fit in with Italy. I closed my eyes, not out of anger, but because it stung. In my sister's eyes, Italy wasn't meant for someone like me. Quiet, simple, unremarkable. And worse, in my mother's eyes, that idea was valid. She nodded and smiled. No one disagreed. No one mentioned that I too might belong in a place like this. I started to realize, all these years I had only been useful. When someone needed help with tuition, I appeared. When the plumbing broke, they called me. But when it came to joy, to memories, to real living, I was left out, as if I didn't qualify for emotional experience. At Piazza Navona, surrounded by towering Baroque sculptures, I stood still and watched water spray from a stone fish's mouth. Children laughed and ran circles around the fountain. A violin played softly in the corner. One afternoon, wandering through Trastevere, I stumbled into an old bookshop. The scent of aged paper and oak filled the air. I sat down, picked up a worn English novel, and read under the warm, dim glow of a yellow bulb. A single line stopped me cold. Some people will never see you as a priority, because to them, you were only ever a solution. I closed the book. That was it. I was a solution, the one they could rely on, the one who was free, unburdened. The shadow that stayed behind while they assumed I would never have a light of my own. That night, I had a simple dinner at a tiny trattoria. At the next table, an elderly Dutch couple toasted and smiled like newlyweds. I ate alone, but I wasn't sad. I felt lighter, as if a stone had finally rolled off my chest. I didn't need them to understand. I didn't need an apology. All I needed was clarity. And if this journey was meant to be a solo one, then so be it. Because I would rather walk alone than keep living like a ghost in my own family. I returned to Nashville on a quiet Monday morning. The plane touched down at 6:12 a.m., the sky covered in a soft, silver gray, like the whole city was still half asleep. I didn't tell anyone I was back. I didn't text Mom. I didn't call Melanie. No one picked me up. No conversation waited for me on the other end. Just me, and the suitcase that had followed me through the stone streets of Rome. The taxi dropped me off in front of my apartment. I paid, rolled my bag inside, turned on the lights, and stood in the quiet, chilly room. No ringing phone. No "are you home yet" text. No invitation for dinner. And honestly, I didn't feel sad. I brewed a cup of coffee, opened the curtains, and sat down in my usual wooden chair by the window. Outside, the street began to stir. Inside, I let the silence settle, without rushing to fill it with busyness, check-ins or last-minute transfers. The silence lasted exactly 3 days. On Thursday evening, my phone rang. It was Mom. I didn't answer. A message came through right after. "Sweet Aurora, I heard you took a trip. I hope you had a relaxing time. Call me when you can." I read it and didn't reply. A day later, another message. "Your dad needs to replace his tires urgently, and he just had his hours cut. Can you help a little?" I leaned back into my chair and closed my eyes. Same tone. It always began with a little concern and ended with a financial request wrapped in family language. That was always their way. Gentle, calculated. I didn't respond right away. It wasn't until Sunday, when Mom called for the 3rd time, that I finally picked up. Her voice lit up with relief. "Aurora, you finally answered. I thought you were mad at me." I replied briefly. "I'm not mad, just enjoying some quiet." "So, you had a nice trip, right? I saw photos your friend posted on Facebook. The city looked beautiful." I paused for a few seconds, then answered, "Yeah, Rome was beautiful, even though someone once said I didn't belong there." There was a pause on the other end. Mom chuckled nervously. "You must have misunderstood. I just meant you live simply, so maybe you wouldn't enjoy such luxurious places." I cut her off, my voice calm but firm. "You don't need to explain, Mom. I heard it clearly." She went quiet. I continued. "And about the tires, I think it's best if you ask Melanie." Mom's voice dropped, slightly tense. "Melanie just paid for summer school tuition for the kids. You know what their situation is. I didn't want to bother you, but this time it's really urgent." I exhaled softly, not angry, not bitter, and said only one thing. "You didn't seem too worried when booking first-class tickets to Florence a few weeks ago." The silence on the other end stretched like a vacuum. "That was a promotion, and we booked it long ago. It's not the same as me going on vacation," I said with a light laugh. "Not the same as me having the right to spend the money I earn. Aurora, don't make it sound like your family doesn't appreciate you." "Mom," I said slowly, "if you ever called me once, without mentioning money, maybe I'd believe that." She sighed, her voice weary. "I don't want things to be like this, but you know your father and I are struggling." "I know," I said, "and I also know I've been treated as the solution for far too long. Now, I just want to be a normal person." I ended the call after that, without waiting for her to say anything else. I was just about to make my morning coffee when the phone rang again. The name flashing on the screen was one I had avoided for weeks. Melanie. I hesitated for a second, then picked up. Her voice came through immediately, no small talk. "So you're finally answering. How long were you planning to play this silent treatment game, Aurora?" I leaned lightly against the kitchen counter, my tone calm. "Good morning, Melanie. I'm doing well, thanks for asking." "Don't deflect," she cut in. "This has gone way too far. Are you seriously mad just because of that trip? You think it's just about the trip? Isn't it?" She raised her voice. "You disappeared, ignored everyone. Mom cried all week. And you? You just stayed silent, like the family did something horrible." I set my coffee down, took a deep breath, then said each word clearly. "It's not like something happened. It did happen. Because I didn't invite you to Italy?" Melanie let out a half laugh. "Aurora, you're too old to be acting this childish." I looked ahead at the empty space in front of me. My voice didn't shake, but it was cold. "You didn't invite me because you never even thought about me. Not once. I'm just the person you go to when something breaks. The walking wallet. The name you dial when you need money for Ellie's school. When Noah's car breaks down. When you need help fixing your water heater. But when it's something joyful, your dream vacation? I'm nowhere in your equation." There was silence on the other end. But I didn't stop. "Did you know I had already booked a ticket? Same time, same day. And I saw you. With Mom and the kids. In matching outfits, boarding first class, laughing together. Saying, I didn't belong in Italy. Aurora, were you eavesdropping? Her voice faltered. No need to eavesdrop, Melanie. I was standing there, in line like everyone else, and I realized I was never a part of the beautiful things in this family. I heard a sharp exhale from the other end. Maybe she hadn't expected me to know, hadn't expected me to be there, or to have heard every word. You're blowing this out of proportion, she said, her voice smaller. All these years, you've helped so much, everyone knows that. But that doesn't give you the right to lash out now. It's not because I helped a lot, I replied. It's because I was never truly loved. This family sees me as the reliable one when something goes wrong. But for birthdays, I'm not invited. For holidays, I'm the one who brings dessert and stays to wash dishes. And you're the star of the show. Are you jealous? I smiled. No, Melanie, I don't need to be the center of attention. I just want to be respected as a human being. Not a wallet, not someone standing backstage just to keep your spotlight shining. She went quiet for a long moment, then said in a dismissive tone, Then do whatever you want. Just don't come crawling back when it all falls apart. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. Don't worry, I won't come back. I spent far too long living for people who never once chose me. Now I'm choosing to live for myself, and you? You'll have to figure things out on your own. She hung up first. The cold beep of disconnection echoed in my ear. Finally, I had said what I needed to say. Not to keep the peace, not to please anyone, but to make one thing clear. I was done staying silent, and I was no longer here to carry the weight for anyone else. 3 days after that call with Melanie, my voicemail started filling up. First came Mom. Aurora, you can't just cut us off like this. No matter what, we're still family. I don't want people saying you've turned your back on us. Then came Dad, who rarely called directly. I heard what you said to your sister. You should call back and make things right. Then came the texts, still polite at first. Just a little help to get us through the week. The bank sent a late notice. I'm really scared, Aurora. You can't just sit back while the family is on the edge like this. I read every message, but I didn't respond. Guilt passed over me like a thin cloud, and then burned away under the light of reason. I wasn't the same voiceless, self-sacrificing shadow I used to be. On the 7th day, I got an unexpected message from Lisa, Melanie's close friend from college, someone I still followed on social media. Hey, Aurora. I'm not sure if I should say anything, but I heard things are kind of falling apart over there. I called her right away, standing in the middle of the grocery store. Where'd you hear that? I asked directly. Some of my friends works at the bank, she said. Your parents are in foreclosure. They've been 3 months late and now they're on the red list. She paused. I also heard Melanie had to dip into her savings to try and cover it. Lisa continued, her voice lower. Her husband, Matt, apparently had no idea. When he saw the savings account drained, he freaked out. I heard they're living apart for now. That night, I received a short message from Melanie. Hope you're happy now. I didn't reply. The next day, my mom left a nearly 2-minute voicemail, her voice cracking as if she'd been crying. Aurora, you can't imagine how stressed I've been. I haven't slept in days. Melanie's falling apart. She's having to carry too much. If you keep staying silent like this, everything's going to fall apart. She paused, then her voice softened. I'm sorry if I was ever thoughtless, but you're the one who always understood. I need you, sweetheart. I listened to it all, but I didn't call back. My whole life, I was taught that the good one never lets the family fall apart. But no one ever asked how many times that good one had already fallen before she learned to stand on her own. Now, with me gone, everything was crashing. Not because I was cruel, but because the truth had been covered up for too long. A week later, I received an email from an address I never expected. Matt, Melanie's husband. Subject: not sure I have the right to say this. The body of the email was just a few lines. I know I don't mean much to you, but I think you deserve to know. Everything you carried. I didn't see it until now. And I'm sorry I ever thought you were just the bitter sister. I hope you find the peace this family never gave you, the way you deserved. I sat in front of the screen for a long time, fingers on the keyboard, not sure if I should reply or stay silent. In the end, I just clicked save and closed the laptop, because maybe even a late acknowledgement is better than none at all. On Wednesday night, as I was drying my hands after dinner, my phone rang. This time it wasn't Mom or Melanie. It was Dad. I hesitated for a few seconds, then answered. Hi, Dad. His voice was low and deliberate, but the tension was obvious. Aurora, this has gone far enough. I didn't respond. He continued, I don't understand what you're thinking, but your family, and this behavior, being silent, refusing, cutting everyone off, it's honestly disappointing. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. He wasn't finished. Family is supposed to support each other, not turn away when things get hard. No matter what, you can't forget who you are. You're acting like a stranger. Do you have any idea how many nights your mother has cried? I set the towel on the kitchen table and sat down in the wooden chair. And do you know how many years I stayed silent? I asked, my voice low but clear. There was a brief pause on the other end, then he replied, You're insulting this family. Your mother and I raised you all these years, and now, just because of one trip, you act like we betrayed you. I let out a quiet laugh, not loud, but deep. It's not just because of a trip, Dad. It's because you left me out long ago, the moment you all planned that flight to Italy without even thinking of me. No invitation, not even a question, just laughter behind my back. You were eavesdropping? His voice sharpened. No, I replied. I just happened to be standing in line right behind the family, and I heard every word. I closed my eyes. The memory was still vivid. My mom laughing. Melanie laughing louder. She wouldn't fit in there, and then they all walked on. As if I didn't exist. You misunderstood, he said, his voice now gentler. That's not how it was. Not how it was? I repeated. Then what was it, Dad? That I only exist when someone needs money? That I only get called when there's a crisis? You're being too sensitive. No. I'm thinking clearly now, I cut in. And I don't think setting boundaries is betrayal. It's growth. It's recognizing where I stand and choosing not to be the fallback plan anymore. I heard a long sigh through the phone. I didn't think you'd be this stubborn. I thought you were the reasonable one. I gave a dry laugh. That's exactly why you always chose me to carry the burden. Because I was reasonable. Because I was the one who understood. But understanding doesn't mean letting others take advantage of you forever without saying a word. There was no argument from the other end now. Just one final line. Exactly what I had expected. If you walk away now, don't expect this family to welcome you back. I stood up, looking out the window where the streetlights had just flickered on. I'm not walking away. I'm stopping at the right time. Aurora, he began. Dad, I said calmly and firmly. You weren't abandoned. You're just now, for the first time, standing on your own without me as your support. And if that makes you angry, maybe you should ask yourselves why everything depended on a daughter you never truly valued. I didn't wait for a reply. I hung up. After that call with Dad, my phone went silent. No more alerts in the middle of the night. No more texts starting with, Aurora, I know you're busy, but... No more missed calls from the landline I'd come to associate with sighs and tears. There was only me, and a strange, cleansing quiet. I woke up on a Monday morning without checking my bank account to make sure I could cover someone else's bill. I made coffee, put on some jazz, and spent the whole morning reading a book without interruption from a family emergency. I started living for myself. I signed up for a weekend painting class. Not because I wanted to be an artist, but because I used to love color in high school and had shelved it for more practical things. I replaced my old sofa with an olive green one, the kind my mom once called impossible to decorate around. I bought a high-end espresso machine and a pair of shoes that cost 3 times more than what I'd ever let myself spend before. No one raised an eyebrow. No one told me to save it for a future home or kids. I only needed to ask one person: myself. The next month, I flew to Kyoto. Sitting in meditation at an ancient temple, I realized peace doesn't always come from going far. It comes from cutting the noise at the right time. There was no satisfaction when I heard Melanie had sold the 2-story house she once flaunted with pride. And when I learned my parents had relocated to a modest rental on the edge of town after losing their home to the bank, I didn't flinch. It wasn't joy, but it wasn't sorrow either. Just a quiet, steady absence of feeling. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was the natural outcome of years where only one person quietly held everything up, and when that person stepped away, the illusion cracked. A friend once asked me over coffee, "You don't feel even a little satisfied? They finally had to take responsibility." I just shook my head. No, because I never wanted them to fall. I just didn't want to keep getting crushed. After my trip to Kyoto, I did one thing. I changed my phone number. Quietly, no announcement. I also locked all my social media accounts and created new ones, connected only with people who truly cared. To Mom, Dad, and Melanie, I left a blank space. Not out of rage, not to prove a point. Just to walk away. I know, if they really needed to, they'd find a way to reach me. But this time, the door won't open again. It wasn't because I was cruel. It was because I no longer wanted to be shoved back into the same old place where every bit of value I brought was tied to a dollar amount and my existence only mattered when someone needed saving. I used to believe I owed them because they gave me life, raised me, paid for school. But after everything, I realized I don't owe them my success. I don't owe them forgiveness. And I certainly don't owe them my life. One late afternoon, sitting on the balcony of my new apartment, golden sunlight resting on my shoulder, I opened a journal and wrote a simple line. Aurora, 32 years old, no longer chasing after people who don't need her, finally choosing herself, one day at a time. I set the pen down and closed my eyes. No more voices calling from behind. No more whispers of, "Your sister has it harder, be understanding." No more questions soaked in pity and pressure. Just me, in silence, permanent. Aurora's story is a powerful reminder. Love shouldn't only show up when help is needed. In real life, those labeled as the responsible ones are often taken for granted, as if it's just expected. But when they learn to set boundaries, their silence is no longer weakness. It's strength. Freedom doesn't come from being accepted. It comes from the moment we stop asking for permission to live authentically. And sometimes cutting ties isn't the end. It's the beginning of true peace. What do you think about Aurora's journey? Have you ever been in a similar situation? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family, choices, and personal growth.